Hello everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia and today it is time for the final installment in my 30 stories in 30 days short story for Shorty September project. Any other words that start with the letter S that you want to insert into that title. And I've made it to the end of the month and I accomplished my goal of reading 30 different stories by 30 different authors in 30 days. I remembered to post the community posts. I made the videos. This is the last one. So I hope that you have enjoyed this project with me. I know a lot of people have joined in and read some of the stories or been inspired to read some other short stories that they had been meaning to get to. So I was really happy to see that people got caught up in the spirit of the whole thing. So thank you for going on this short story journey with me. And today we're going to talk about the last 6 stories from the very end of the month. Can you hear that? There's a thunderstorm. It's kind of exciting because we have been in a drought all summer, but it's kind of gotten into a little rainy pattern. So like this whole week is off and on rain, although it's not really like a big cool down, which is the other thing we would like. It's like hot, swampy, humid rain, but with like a high of 90, so it's kind of like a shower, like a sauna or something, but you know, the yard will be very happy. All right, but let's talk about the stories. From September 26th, the story of the day was Sonny's Blues by James Baldwin, and I read it from this collection, Going to Meet the Man, which is an anthology of Baldwin stories. And Sonny's Blues was first published in 1958 in Mademoiselle magazine. And that set me off on a little research refreshment about that history of Mademoiselle magazine and literary fiction writers. Because I remember being, the first time I heard about that and being so surprised, and it was when I was a teenager and got into Sylvia Plath, and I read The Bell Jar and started reading her poetry and some letters and journals and things like that, which I have a lot of that still here, and I'd like to reread some of it. But I say that about everything, don't I? Oh, I need to reread it. But, you know, hence the title of my channel. But anyway, when I heard about her history of winning a contest in that magazine and interning there, and some of that is touched upon in The Bell Jar, I thought, wait, what? Mademoiselle? Because by then, I guess that was in the 80s, it was already just a fashion magazine, really. It was about clothes and makeup and style. It wasn't about notable authors. But its original history, I think the magazine came, I don't know about the history of this magazine, maybe like from the 40s, up until the 70s or 80s, it would publish short fiction by some pretty heavy hitters, including James Baldwin. I just think, but I'm still just picturing it, and it just seems really weird that in 1958, there's this magazine, and it's about, I don't know, I'm picturing like poodle skirts and sweater sets, and then Sonny's Blues is right there in the middle of the magazine. But I don't know, the history of magazines in general is interesting to me because I have always loved magazines, and now they're all dying out, and the ones that I've always enjoyed are mostly gone. But that is a whole other topic that probably could be a video of its own. But I digress, as I often do, from Sonny's Blues. So I had not read this story before. The only thing I've read by James Baldwin is Giovanni's Room, and I read that earlier this year after I had made a video about some literary white whales, authors and books that I have never read, and one of them was James Baldwin. So then I read Sonny's Blues, and I read Giovanni's Room, and I think I read it in June and included it in my Pride Month reading. And I really loved Giovanni's Room. Just the way that he wrote, I knew from that point I wanted to read some more James Baldwin. So when my short story project came around, I said, oh, I need to include him. So I read Sonny's Blues because it came up as being one of his most notable stories. And it was very interesting. And it's about a a young husband and father who is an algebra teacher, a black man in Harlem, and he reads in the paper one morning while he's on the subway on the way to work that his brother, from whom he has been estranged for a while, has been arrested for heroin possession. And the story is basically, it's a journey with these two brothers, and it goes into the past and kind of explores what happened in their family that kind of separated Sonny from everybody else. And then it's also the journey of the two brothers reconciling and reestablishing their relationship together, looking at the past and looking at the future. It's also about Sonny's reckoning with his addiction. It's about his identity as a musician, the joy and the terror of it all, and all these things being inextricably linked. And I really want to read it again and really pick apart this really important conversation near the end of the book between the two men, when they're really trying to reach a better understanding of each other. And Sonny's really trying to explain how music makes him feel and why it's important, and how heroin made him feel, and how he is in danger of relapsing. And his brother is really trying to listen and understand. And it's a conversation that is confusing, and it starts and stops, and people grasp for different ways to explain things. And I just thought it was really a beautiful piece of dialogue between two people who love each other, but they don't really understand, but they really want to. And each of them has dealt with tragedy in their lives. The new relationship began to form during letters that they wrote to each other when Sonny was incarcerated. And that's another thing. It falls into this history of literature where letters are important, and how that's part of human history too, is people who are physically separated taking the time to really think about what they want to say and commit it to paper and put that in the mail. And that's just, that type of conversation is fading and lost. People just don't put that amount of care into a text, and misunderstandings proliferate. But anyway, again, I digress. But these are some of the things that came in and out of my mind while I was reading Sonny's Blues. And I want to read it again because I feel like I need to read again what our narrator tells us about the family history, and then that conversation again, and then the scene at the end where he watches Sonny play in a club. So I need to read it again. It definitely is not a one-timer. It's to savor all the layers. You need to read it more than once. All right, the next one was, these are all out of order, aren't they? The next one was a story by Elizabeth Strout, a newish story. And I found this anthology just sitting in new releases at the library, and I looked to see who was in it, and then I snatched it up, and it's called Small Odysseys, Selected Shorts Presents 35 New Stories. So if you have ever happened to hear that radio show on NPR, Selected Shorts, where authors will share a story that they have written and read it, a new story. This is a compilation of some of those stories, and this was published in 2022. And the short story by Elizabeth Strout is called Home. Now, what was interesting to me here was I wasn't really surprised that she recycled a character, because she does that a lot. There is sort of a Stroutiverse through the Olive Kitteridge books, the Lucy Barton books, and the Burgess Boys fits into the Stroutiverse too. And their characters will reappear, and somebody will be a main character or an important secondary character in one story, but maybe just a passing encounter at the grocery store in another story. So this story had the character Annie Appleby, who appeared in Anything is Possible, which is the second Lucy Barton book, and is a collection of linked stories set in Lucy's hometown. Annie is in that story, and now she's in this story, and she is trying to help her mother move into a memory care facility. And that, of course, is wrought with tension, and her mother is, you know, intermittently not understanding, reluctant. Annie's been given these instructions about how to go through the steps of doing this, and it's very difficult. There's, you know, things about, oh, well, you just have to put her in and then not talk to her for a week, and then she'll get used to it. Just like things that sound really harsh and unkind, but she's told that this is the best way to do it, to make this transition of moving her mom out of this home that she's lived in for decades. So that's the emotional climate of this story. And it made me wonder if what's going on in Strout's mind with where she's going with her next novel, because she's coming back around to a character that she hasn't talked about in a while from the town that Lucy used to live in. So I'm wondering if there's any clues there about what's coming next from this author that I automatically read all of her novels when they come out. And the thunder rolls. So from September 28th, the story was An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge by Ambrose, Bierce. This is a classic, highly frequently anthologized story from the late 1800s. Ambrose Bierce was a Civil War veteran. He was mostly known as a journalist during his life, but he also wrote short stories and poetry. Some of it's horror and speculative, some of it's historical. He was pretty prolific, but a lot of that was not appreciated until after he died. And I was reviewing his life and times on Wikipedia, and I didn't know about the mysterious circumstances surrounding the end of his life. But in, I can't remember the year, he was 71. It was the early 1900s, like 1913 or 1912, something like that. He decided to go on a tour of the Civil War locations that he had, where he had been as a young man when he was a soldier. And so he embarked on this tour, but at some point he crossed the border into Mexico, and he began to travel with Pancho Villa's army as an observer. And he was corresponding and sending letters for a while, and then at some point they just stopped, and nobody ever heard from him again or saw him again. So it is not known if he died during his tour with the army, or, you know, so then all these speculations about how he died or where he died, or did he come back secretly into the U.S., or, well, we shall never know. And I didn't read further to see if there's any more researched studies into this about what happened. I just Wikipedia'd. I made a verb. Wikipedia it. I looked it up. Okay, I looked it up. That's what I found out. This is a story. It's a very short story. It's very powerful. It's really a banger. And it is about a guy. It's Civil War. He's on a bridge. He's Confederate. Some Union soldiers are getting ready to hang him on this bridge for his attempted sabotage of the bridge. And he's going through all these things in his mind right before this guy's going to step off a plank, and that's going to drop him down. And he's thinking about, we find out what happened, what his transgression was, and how he came to be here. And then when he drops, a bunch of stuff happens that I can't tell you because it would spoil the story. It's worth your time to read this story that's only a few pages long. And there's also this little film, and here's where my memory comes in. When I was thinking about the short stories, and I thought, oh, Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, that's that story where I saw a movie of that story, and it freaked me out. Well, the reason why is because I saw it in elementary school. I remember very clearly sitting and watching this reel-to-reel 70s style production of this story. And now reading the story again, and I found the movie on YouTube, and I'm going to put it down below, I thought, what was the teacher thinking? I mean, I must have been about in 4th grade, and this is not age appropriate. But I don't know if she just grabbed something of the right length to fill a space in the day, or she saw, oh, it's American history, or it's a famous story, but somehow she did not do her due diligence, and we all sat and watched this story that probably was not the best choice for a bunch of 9-year-olds. But somehow it didn't traumatize me enough that I didn't go looking for it again. I probably got a thrill out of it because I knew we were watching something we shouldn't have seen. But anyway, it is a great, short, powerful, little surprising story with a you got to just read it. But the weird thing is, I went back and I played the film, and it's almost silent because the film is actually French. But in my memory, I remember this kind of sort of booming title sequence that went, "An occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge." And I remember that very clearly, but it is not on this film. The film, it puts the title up and it just starts, and I don't know where that comes from. Maybe some kid in the back said it, but I was waiting for that to come into the film and it never happened. But that is definitely the film that I saw. So memory is a funny thing, but it's a great story. The film is memorable. Check it out. On the 29th, the story is Recognition by Victor LaValle, and that was my final story that I pulled out of the Decameron Project, which was a collection of stories published in the New York Times during March and, well, the whole spring of 2020. They asked writers to submit something that kind of reflected where they were in their mind right now in those times. And some of the stories are directly about COVID and quarantines, and some are not, but just inspired by the feelings. And so this is a short, spooky story about an apartment building in New York, how the city was very empty and creepy, and most of the people left and went to relatives and things, and this narrator is in the building, and there's very few other residents, and they make friends with somebody down the hall. That's all I'm going to tell you because it's quite short and has a spooky conclusion. And it kind of tied in well because we're watching The Changeling right now, which is by Victor LaValle's novel, which I haven't read, so I don't know what's going to happen, but it takes place in New York, and a lot of it is in an apartment and then other locations around town, and it's gotten pretty weird and dark. I don't understand I don't know what's going on, and I hope that by the end it all makes sense, but right now I'm kind of a little bit lost. We're liking it, but it's one of those ones, like, depending on where they go with this story, I'm either going to conclude that I liked it, or I'm going to go, well, why did I watch 8 episodes of that? But so we'll see. But and it's also narrated by Victor LaValle, so you get to hear his voice if you're watching that show. So anyway, I liked the little story. And then the very last one, woo! Hope you heard all that. The very last one, because we're transitioning into October, was Bees by Dan Chaon, and it was from this horror anthology, Post Children, the New Horror, edited by Peter Straub. And I don't think that Peter Straub is still with us, so when this was copyright 2008. So Dan Chaon is one of my favorite authors. I love his novels, and this short story was really disturbing. It was a horror story. It is about a man who is a recovering alcoholic who has a wife and son, but he previously in his past had a different wife and son. But he kind of checked out on them. He drank too much. He had a car wreck. He sort of either kicked out or walked away and lost contact with them, basically. But he has a lot of leftover guilt about that because his son that he's raising currently has reached the age at which he left his first family. And weird things start to happen. The child starts to have very bizarre sleep disturbances, and then no one else can really sleep either. And then the man starts to have bizarre dreams where his previous son is appearing to him, but at all different ages and points of life. And then the ending is truly horrific. So if you don't want a absolute straight up horror story with a nasty ending, steer clear. But if you're up for it for spooky season, that was The Bees by Dan Chaon. And if you have never read any of his novels, get on it, because he is always surprising, always unsettling. I really love this author. All right, that was it. Tell me what you thought about any of these stories or the project in general. If you enjoyed this project, or if you have any ideas about something I could consider to make it even better next year. And I will tell you, I've already gone back and finished the rest of that entire Bloodchild book by Octavia Butler. I'll talk about that on Friday Reads. But it kind of got me going, and now I have short stories on the brain, and I'm going to be reading all kinds of things on the side forevermore, I guess. But I had a lot of fun with this. I'm happy that the one-a-day project is over, so I can just read willy-nilly, and now I'm already steeped in Victober and having fun with that as well. I hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.